Hi, I'm Raphael Heath at the Royal High School Bath, Head of Geography. I'm going to talk you through the idea of producing proportional flow lines, symbols within ArcGIS Online. A number of people have requested interest in how to do this, and I've only recently discovered it myself, so I think it'd be interesting to talk about. It's the sort of thing we typically do in geography as a sort of CBD study or something similar. Okay, so this is the kind of effect we're hoping to get to in the end. This is for the town of Cambridge, and we can see there's different flow lines thicknesses here. If I go to the legend, you can see this relates to the number of people who've come into central Cambridge CBD via questionnaire students have done from different locations. So up here in Bar Hill we can see a thicker line coming into central Cambridge, showing that a larger number of people came into there than perhaps from some of these other regions to the south of Cambridge, and that might relate to something to do with the sphere of influence and the locations there. We could add other layers in. I may get onto this later, trying to show things like drive times we can create from central Cambridge to correlate with these flow lines to see how far people are prepared to travel to central Cambridge, to see if again that has an influence on the sphere of influence. Okay, to do this you'll need to have an ArcGIS Online subscription, so I'm assuming you're all subscribers to do this and know how to sign in and everything. So I'm just going to go straight into opening a map, and I brought the map straight into here in Cambridge, United Kingdom, just to get us started here. Okay. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is create a table with the data in, fieldwork data. So here we have a list of places which I'm going to ask people in the questionnaire. I'm sending my students out and I'm going to say to them, okay, where have you come from today? Asking people in the Central Business District of Cambridge. And I've got a list of places because it's quite difficult to ask people any too personal details, so their actual home, their address, postcode could be a bit tricky to get hold of. Though if you did get hold of that and wanted to put it in, it would obviously produce quite a lot of rich data for this, as you'd be able to use postcode data to put directly into ArcGIS Online. But I've just got a list of names of places that are around Cambridge, and I'm just going to ask people which best describes their location, nearest location they've come from. So I've already typed these into a spreadsheet in Excel. That's all I've done. I've opened a spreadsheet in Excel, and I've just given it a title, location, and there's a list of places that correspond to my questionnaire. I then need to type in some other columns, so I'm going to type in here something like number of people, and then the final column here I'm going to type in longitude and latitude here. Now this is the bit that involves a little bit of setting up. I'm going to have to actually make the effort to actually find the longitude and latitude for these lists of places, and this is one of the things I just have to do in order to get this all working. So I'll just show you in principle this when you see use a real example, but if I go to the measure tool up here, I've got various things I can do, including find locations. So if, let's say, this is one of my locations over here, Bar Hill, then I can put a dot up here and it gives me the longitude and latitude of that location. And all I need to do now is just copy that in. So I'm just going to highlight it, press copy, switch to my spreadsheet and paste. The longitude's gone in, and the same for latitude. It's a long number, so it's going to be easier than remembering it. Okay, there you go. That was actually for Bar Hill, so I'm just going to move that down. But the principle's there. So obviously that's a bit fiddly. You have to go through that if you've got a list of places. But once you've set it on once, the job is done. Next, so you do that for all the places. If I want to pick another place here, just click on here. You can see the longitude, latitude changing. And there we go, there's the next one to copy in or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to do all them now, but that's the principle. And the other thing is the number of people. So basically what's happened here is I've got students to ask people the data here, in this case just on a piece of paper. So what we're going to have to do is when we get back to the classroom at the end of the trip, we're just going to have to do a tally of all the people we've collected and add in the totals here. So if we asked 50 people that day and 10 came from Bar Hill, then I'd put 10, and if 2 came from Barrington or 9 came from Barton, and so on. So that's how the data would go in. I'll show you what it looks like when it's completed. So here's a completed set of data here. All the longitude, latitude data in, all the numerical data in, and the place names. When I get data like this and I want to bring it into ArcGIS Online in order to actually map this data, I need to save it in a particular format rather than just a standard spreadsheet. So I need to go save as, not a standard save. And I've got various options here of how I can save. I always save as CSV, delimited. A very simple form of just basically listing the data as a text file, and that's the way it's recognised in ArcGIS Online. So I'll save it and give it a name. So Cambridge Sphere of Influence, I'll call it test data, as I've already done this before with other data. I'll leave it as that. Save that data. Gives me a couple of messages here saying, are you sure you want to save it in this format, because it doesn't have the full functionality of Excel spreadsheets and formulas and things, but that's absolutely fine. So I just said yes for both of them. Okay, so I didn't need that for the moment, and that's why I've opened the map up, just to sort of get to that location. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move away from the map and back in ArcGIS Online, go to my content, and now I'm just going to bring this sphere of influence data into ArcGIS Online. So I go to my content and I say add item up here. It says where do you want it from, so I'm going to choose to get it from my computer. I just need to find where I save that file. So this is in my GIS folder for Cambridge, and there it is, sphere of influence test data. I say open. It just checks through the data, just make sure that it's in the right type or format for ArcGIS Online, which is what it's doing at the moment. Also just checking some of the fields that are in it, so the longitude and latitude, for example, to test it can recognise that. There we go. So that took a few seconds or so. It's automatically given me a title, though I can change that if I want. I need to give it some tags. I tend to give RHSB a tag so that I can quickly find all my maps amongst all the other maps saved by the general public, and I can have various words in here that help me CBD describe and find the map in future. Then it says publish this file as a feature layer, which I do want to do. I'll leave that ticked, and it's recognised the longitude latitude data is in there. I can check that it's spotted the right fields for longitude and latitude. It's also realised that the location is a string, which means it's text, and number of people is an integer or number data, which means I can then display symbols and stuff on that. So I then click add item, and what this is doing is it's sending the information to ArcGIS Online servers. It's requesting the information to be turned now into essentially a shapefile, a point shapefile in this case, so lots of dots on the map be created in the right locations where the longitudes and latitudes are, and this is a process that's going on, processing in the ArcGIS Online servers. So this is all being done in real time. You saw that was quite quick to create. It's got a nice little series of dots here, which looks quite convincing to me, and it contains all the data and information. You'll notice this is a display for what's called the details of the feature service. This is the feature service that's been made. So a feature service is not a map, it's just a layer that gets added to a map. There are a few things I might want to do when I've created a feature service or go to its details. For example, here I can share it, so I might choose to share the layer with everyone. That's if I want it very easily accessible. For example, if students are trying to access it without logging in, I can share it with groups as well. And under edit, if you go here, I can change the name and things, but there's also opportunities to enable editing and syncing and so on. I won't put sync on for a moment, but that would allow you to use offline editing in the collector app if you were going to add more data on that. I might as well tick that, and so on. But the editing is quite useful one to tick. What that does, it means that I may not be using it in this case, but it means that if I wanted to just put a new dot on the map and add data to it, I could do, which otherwise I wouldn't be able to. Anyway, the map's been created. I'm now going to open it, which will open a map view with this data in it. So we're back to our map of Cambridge here, and we can see the dots here. So if we go to the Bar Hill data, we can see it tells me this is Bar Hill, number of people that came from Bar Hill to Cambridge that were interviewed that day were 28, and the longitude and latitude data is in there as well. So that's all that it contains. It's point or dot data, and yeah, okay, that's fine. That's already visualizing my sphere of influence. We could say the job is done, but we want to take it a little bit further. So I'm just going to zoom into the centre of Cambridge now, and wanted to create these flow line maps to these dots to help symbolize the data effectively. So I'm going to go under the Add button here. I'm going to add map notes, and this one I'm just going to call Cambridge CBD Center. Okay, and create that. Now what I'm doing here, map notes here basically allows me just to draw onto the map shapes and pins and lines and so on, and the purpose of doing this is I just want to define where the center is so that I can do my flow lines from that point. So I'm just going to take a pin symbol here, and I will put the pin where my fieldwork data collection was going on, so I'll say that that is the centre of Cambridge. I could name it the centre of Cambridge if I wanted to, CBD Center, though I don't need to, and I'm just going to close that. So if we go back to the details page, you'll see I've got two layers. I've got this pin which is called CBD Center, which is just a manually drawn layer, and I've got these dots which are the sphere of influence data. Of course, if you were collecting fieldwork live and you wanted to add data to it, then as I said, you can click edit here. You'll see that you can edit the actual CBD layer, and you've got at the bottom here this new feature which you can add. Let me get rid of this CBD layer to avoid confusion. So I've ticked off the pin here. If I go to edit now, you'll see you've only got that new feature. So I could click on there, I say, oh, I've seen someone in my fieldwork today, I've interviewed them, they come from this location, I put in a dot, could give their location and the number of people, and obviously if more people came from there I could add number of people to that. I'm going to delete that one because that's not real data. Okay. Anyway, that's the principle of that. That's why I allowed editing to occur. But anyway, I'm not trying to edit this. All I've got at the moment is a CBD dot and my location dots for my fieldwork data. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this CBD dot and try and create these flow lines from it. So I need to go to the little smaller arrow. If you saw me just click that at the end of the layer name and go to Perform Analysis, and within the Perform Analysis options, so I have to click this one called Points. Now I've got various options of things that I can do to try and analyse and look at the data. The one I'm going to use is this one called Proximity. Use Proximity and Find Nearest. You can see that symbol looks very similar to what we're trying to create, which is the flow line map. So I can read that through now. It says for each location in Cambridge CBD Center, which is the pin that I've got in the middle here. So I've just double checked that's correct. That's what I wanted it to do. Find the nearest locations in, and then it says Cambridge Sphere of Influence Test Data, which is the data I've just brought in. Of course, if you've got many layers on the map, you'll have lots of choices here. So you've just got to make sure you pick the right thing. And then we can do this in a number of ways. I'm going to do it with a line distance first of all, it then says, do I want to limit the number of nearest locations? Because the real purpose of this is maybe to find the nearest thing. So I might say I want to find the nearest dot, bit of data that was to the CBD, but in this case I don't actually want to do that. I want to draw lines to every single dot, so I'm going to take that away. But that may be an option that is of use to you sometimes. And this is limit the search range. I don't really, the search range I want as big as possible. It's going to include all of these, and then it gives it a name: nearest Cambridge Sphere of Influence, Cambridge CBD Center points. That's the automatic name. I might rename that. So I'm going to call it Flow Lines Sphere of Influence Test 2. And I'm just going to save it in a folder called test. I can delete that later. It then says use current map extender. For example, I was zoomed into here and that was ticked. It would only include these sort of 5 or 6 dots here, so I've got to watch that out for that. In that case, I wouldn't use current map extend. If I'm zoomed out and it includes all my dots, it doesn't matter one way or the other, but I'm going to turn it off. And then it says show credits. That'll check how many credits it's going to use, and then I click run analysis. So I'm going to click run analysis now, and you can see it doing the processing, the little wheels whirling around here, and it's trying to do the calculations for me. It should create these straight lines from Cambridge CBD Center to the various dots, just to show the relationship between them, and it helps visualize the kind of sphere of influence through doing that. Sometimes these analysis tools go wrong, not quite sure why, it seems sort of random, but generally it works. So there you go. If it doesn't work, just try again. if you're doing what I was doing, you're doing the right thing. So you can see here, what we've done here is create a straight line, direct sort of connections between each of the points in the centre, and that helps again just visualise the CBD and its centre. Probably not doing, you could argue, much more than just having the dots, but it's a sort of visualisation. But the reason for doing it is because if I click on one of the lines here, see this is the line it's created, and oops, let's click on another one, sorry, and you can see it's got all this data within it. It tells me the rank of which, how near that particular place was out of all the places I've got, which is potentially quite interesting. It also gives me the straight line distance, which I think is quite nice in kilometres and miles. So I can now give some numbers to the sphere of influence as well. But it's also contained all the other data for the points as well. So it's got the longitude and latitude on that particular place. Not maybe a good example because it's Rampton and no one was there. It came from there. So let's pick one at, obviously in my list, but no, number of people near 0. Bar Hill, I'm sure someone came from Bar Hill. There we go, 28 people, okay. So we can see at the moment these are straight lines, but there is actually different data of number of people. So obviously this doesn't yet visualize it very well, so if I want to visualize that, I'm going to just make sure I'm clicking on the right layer. So this layer is the lines. By clicking it on and off I can see that's the lines, just to double check. And this one is just a little dot which goes over the other dots with the same data in, so it doesn't do very much for me. So I'm going to go onto this line and change symbols now. And it's not a single symbol, just the purple line. I'm going to use size instead. And the field I'm going to pick is called number of people. There it is, okay. And there we go, now we can see different thicknesses. So if I start applying that, we can see the thicker line to Bar Hill shows that more people came from there, and the least people came from these locations with 0 to 3 people in or so on. So there we go, that's the basic idea behind that. So that's one way of doing it. That's a straight line flow sphere of influence and flow line map, taking each location down to the centre and changing the symbol sizes for that, and I can play around with thickness if I wanted as well to make that more powerful. I'll show you how to do that actually. Under change symbol, just under options here, change your symbols. I might have that start width much smaller, and then the largest one it can be bigger. Done. And that's a bit more dramatic, so those places with 0 or 1 people are very, very small now, and the others much thicker. So I'm quite pleased with that. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing again, just take those away to avoid confusion. Go back to that centre, and I'll just do it the other way now. Perform analysis on points, use proximity, and find nearest. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing as before. Notice there's a couple more layers now, so I've got to make sure I pick the right one, because they include the things I've just created. Say Cambridge Sphere of Influence Test Data is the one I want, but you can see you can do it on driving time or driving distance. So if I do it on driving distance this time, just to show you the effect, I don't want to limit the number of points, if you remember I mentioned before, and the search is fine, and I'm going to call it driving distance sphere of influence Cambridge test 2. Okay, and I'm going to save it back in my test file. I'm not going to use current map extend just to make sure I can include all the dots, and run analysis again. So the reason for showing you this is the map I showed you right at the beginning. This tutorial had the actual routes people would have to drive in order to get to this CBD area. Of course, not everyone has necessarily driven in, but a lot of these locations people would have had to have driven in or taken a bus or something. So in a way, this using a straight line distance isn't a really fair representation of the distances people had to cover in order to get to the CBD. So the processing is going on, and you can see here that exactly the same thing's been asked for, but this time it's going along the actual routes or roads that people would have to pick in order to get to this location. So let's just check. I'll get rid of that one. So there we go, that's the layer with the lines in, and again exactly the same principle for changing the symbols. Single symbol change to size. The field is going to be based on where's it gone? Number of people. Where's my number of people? There it is. Normalize by none. You can see I've got different options about how I split the data, number of classes, apply, and you can start to see that. And again, if I go to the options, change all symbols, transparency start with, it's going to make that small, make that big, apply, done. Okay, so there you go. So there's our sphere of influence for these different dots. Some of them not connected. That might be because they've got 0 people in. I'd have to double check that, but I suspect that, which is kind of good because that's what I want. And you can see different thicknesses according to where people come from. That gives me a really good sense of the sphere of influence for different numbers of people. So that's the idea of creating a proportional flowline map, either using straight line distances. Sorry, there you go. See the straight line effect, or the drive distance effect there. And you can have a play around with that, but that's a pretty neat tool. And one last thing we could try on this was just to take the data further. I'll leave this map up. If I go back to my CBD City Center, perform analysis on those points, and this time, which one am I going to use? Create buffers. Create drive time. This one. Create drive time areas. Okay. So this time I could create buffers, which from my central point had different, let's say, distances from the city centre. So every kilometre or so on, and you'd create circles so I could see how far people came. So I could do that. That's pretty straightforward, but I'm just going to use this one, create drive time areas, because it's even more kind of clever, as it were. So I'm creating drive time areas from Cambridge CBD point, which is where I want. That's that green point in the pin. I'm going to base it either on driving time or driving distance. So I'll use time, and then how many intervals do I want? I can create just one area around here, 5 minutes of drive time from that point, but I'm going to use 5 minute, 10 minute, 15, 20, 25 minute intervals, and all I have to do is just create a space between them to create, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buffers. There we go, that's in minutes, that's fine. I could leave it as that, but I could actually, if I wanted to, this is clever, use traffic information. So it says using the live traffic information, how far can I drive in 5, 10, 25 minutes. That'll obviously vary on different times of day, or actually on typical conditions. So I might have been doing my field work on a Thursday at, let's say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon roughly, and so I could base it on that. I think that's again pretty clever, interesting idea. Get students to think about. You could also create drive times at different times of day to see the differences to drive to or from a location based on traffic issues that brings up on rush hour and non-rush hour. Overlap's fine. Again, it's given me a name, so I'm going to call it drive times minutes from CBD test. Okay, there we go. And I'll put that in my test file as well, just to delete it later. Should be alright using chirometric extend, but I'm going to get rid of that and run the analysis. So what I'm hoping it will do here is create a whole series of shapes, but instead of just being round shapes, in terms of, let's say, 500 metres, 1,000 metres, whatever, from Cambridge City Centre, which I can do using just the standard buffer tool. This should create drive time areas from the city centre. And if I'm looking at this flowline data, which I've just created, and want to know, whether there's an issue with it, how far people came and the distances, then it might be interesting to consider that. For example, here I can see it's very lopsided. Some areas are clearly you can get from quite a long way away to Cambridge City Centre, but other areas are not very accessible or have no roads in. So if I zoom out, you can see that's very different from a circular buffer that's based on drive times. And you can see, obviously, if you're along the road, you can go much further than as you start coming off the roads or off the main roads. So that's quite interesting. At the moment, the colour scheme isn't great for me. I'm also, this layer's on top of my sphere of influence layer, so I'm going to put that up. see the purple's come a little bit more prominent now being on the top layer, so just move that up. And you can see both being purple is not ideal, so again I'm just going to go to change symbols. We shall use a colour for this based on, I think it's called from break is the drive time, 0, 5 minutes, 10 minutes and so on. I could use, let's try a two-tone, see how it comes up. Apply, not too bad. Okay, so one can play around with the colours, but we've got these different colours now, the reds to the greens, showing me increasing drive times to Cambridge City Centre, and I can see my flow line above that as well. So I've created quite a nice little sophisticated map there, and quite useful for sort of fieldwork studies of sphere of influences and analysing the data really from that. There might be reasons linked to drive times as to why this data varies. So yeah, I think that's all I need to show for the moment, but hopefully you found that useful and interesting. Obviously you need to save your map to finalise this, and also once you've saved it you'll be able to share your map. You can share it publicly if you think it'd be of interest to others. If you're part of the GDST group of maps, then don't forget to share your maps with the GDST group. That's it for now. I hope you found that useful. My name is Raphael Heath from the Royal High School Bath, and do get in contact if you've got